Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
Today we're diving into a financial strategy that could be a total game changer for some of you out there.
Right.
Especially if you're dealing with, waiting on those customer payments.
Yeah.
We're talking debt factoring.
Uh-huh.
And to help us navigate this, we've got some insights from Corporate Debt Recovery.
Absolutely. They're the experts in this field. And you know what's fascinating about debt factoring?
What's that?
It's not actually about taking on more debt.
Okay.
It's about getting the money that you're already owed.
Oh, interesting.
Like, it's already yours.
Okay.
It's tied up in these invoices.
So it's like getting paid up front for work you've already done.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, for some businesses,
Yeah.
especially those dealing with, really long payment cycles,
Right.
or if they're growing super fast,
Huh?
that can be a lifesaver.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to break it all down today,
Yeah.
how it works,
Yeah.
who it's a good fit for.
For sure.
All
Yeah,
the, pros and cons,
The good, the bad, the ugly.
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But first, let's set the stage here.
Okay.
Imagine you're a small business owner. You just delivered this big order,
Mm-hmm.
sent out your invoice,
Uh-huh.
and now you're just waiting
Waiting.
60, 90 days for payment.
Ugh. I hate that.
That's where debt factoring comes in. So what is it exactly?
So debt factoring, sometimes it's called accounts receivable financing.
Okay.
It's basically a way to get cash now
Right.
for those invoices that would normally be paid later.
Makes sense.
Now, accounts receivable, that's just a fancy term
Uh-huh.
for the money that customers owe you
Okay.
for goods or services they already received.
Got it. So instead of like waiting around for payment,
Right.
you're essentially selling their invoices to a third party.
Exactly.
And what do they call that third party?
That third party is called a factor.
A factor.
Hence the term debt factoring.
Okay. So there's three players here.
Yes.
You've got the business.
Uh-huh.
That's you, the factor,
Right.
and the customer who owes the money.
That's right. Those are the three key players.
So walk me through this. How does the process actually work?
Okay, so let's say you have this invoice.
Yeah.
For $10,000.
Yeah.
It's due in 2 months. You take that invoice to a factoring company,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of look it over.
Okay.
They want to make sure that your customer is good for it.
Right. They're the ones who are going to be collecting.
Exactly, because they're the ones collecting the payment.
Right.
If everything looks good,
Yeah.
they'll buy the invoice from you.
Okay. So there's some risk assessment there on the factor side.
Oh, absolutely.
So what happens next?
Okay, so the factor will give you
Yeah.
a portion of that invoice value upfront.
Okay.
Usually it's something like 70 to 85%.
Oh, wow.
So in our example,
Yeah.
you'd get $7,000 to $8,500
Wow.
right away.
Okay.
And then you get the rest
Uh-huh.
minus their fee.
Right.
Once the customer pays the factor.
Interesting. So you're essentially selling your invoices at a discount
Right.
to get that cash flow moving.
That's the trade-off.
Okay. Now, when you say selling an invoice, what does that mean?
Good question.
Does the business still own, like,
Yeah, that's a great question.
whatever goods or services they provide?
Yeah, you're not selling the actual goods or services.
Yeah.
You're selling the right to collect the payment.
Okay.
So you still own your product.
Gotcha.
You still own your work.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm sure our listeners are thinking,
Yeah.
hey, getting paid faster sounds great,
Right.
but I'm sure there's some downsides too.
Oh, there are always downsides.
There's got to be a trade-off.
Right. There's no free lunch.
Right, exactly.
But before we get to the downsides,
Okay.
let's really dig into why debt factoring is so appealing
Okay.
for certain businesses,
Sounds good.
because there are some real advantages.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's jump in.
All right. So let's talk about those benefits.
Okay.
I imagine the biggest one is pretty obvious. It's the cash flow.
Yeah. Improved cash flow is like the number one reason
Right.
businesses look into factoring.
Okay.
It's not just about having the cash.
Yeah.
It's about what you can do with it.
Okay. I like that. So give me an example. Like, how does that actually play out?
Okay, so think about a seasonal business,
Okay.
like a landscaping company.
Oh, yeah.
They're super busy in the spring and summer,
Right.
but they have expenses all year round.
Makes sense.
Factoring can help them like bridge that gap,
Uh-huh.
without having to drain their savings
Right.
or take on more debt.
So it keeps things running smoothly,
Exactly.
even when the revenue isn't so consistent.
Keeps the lights on.
What other benefits are there?
Another big one is saving time.
Okay.
Chasing down late payments.
Ugh. The worst.
It's a huge time suck,
Yes.
especially for small businesses.
Yeah.
So when you have a factor handling that,
Right.
you suddenly have all this extra time to focus on other things.
That makes a lot of sense. And from what I understand, debt factoring isn't technically a loan.
Right. It's not a loan.
So it doesn't affect your, debt load or anything.
Nope. You're not borrowing money.
Okay.
You're selling an asset.
Which is your invoices.
Exactly.
Okay. So no interest payment.
No interest payments.
No impact on your credit score.
That's a big one.
Okay.
Especially if you're worried about,
Right. Your debt to equity ratio, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. What about risk?
Oh, yeah. That's another big benefit.
Okay.
Reduced credit risk.
So how does that work?
So basically, the factor takes on the responsibility of collecting the money.
Okay.
Which means they also take on the risk
Got it.
that the customer might not pay.
Okay. So if a customer defaults,
Yeah.
the factor eats that cost,
The factor takes the hit.
not the business.
Exactly.
Wow, that's huge.
It is.
Especially in industries where, that happens a lot.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we've got improved cash flow,
Yep.
time savings,
Uh-huh.
no added debt,
Right.
and reduced credit risk.
It sounds pretty good so far.
It does sound pretty good.
Well, there's always a but.
There's always a catch.
Right, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
So let's talk about those downsides.
Okay, let's get into it.
I'm curious, what are we looking at here?
Well, the most obvious one is the cost.
Okay, so it's not free money,
No, it's not free money.
even though it kind of feels like it.
It would be nice if it was.
It would be.
But factoring companies gotta make money too.
Right.
They charge fees for their services.
Okay, that makes sense. What kind of fees are we talking about?
It really depends on a
Yeah.
few things.
Like what?
Like, how many invoices you're factoring, the industry you're in, the size of your invoices.
Right.
And, probably most importantly,
Right.
how likely your customers are to pay on time.
So if I've got customers who are known for paying late,
Yeah.
my fees are going to be higher.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay.
Because the factor is taking on more risk,
Right.
and they gotta price that risk in.
Makes sense.
So what's the range?
Usually it's somewhere between 1% and 5% of the
Yeah.
invoice value,
Right.
but it can be higher
Okay.
in certain situations.
So what are some other downsides?
Another one.
Yeah.
You lose some control
Okay.
over the customer relationship.
In what way?
Well, once you sell those invoices,
Uh-huh.
the factor is the one
Right.
who handles the billing and collections.
But isn't that a good thing for the customer?
I mean, yeah, they're getting paid faster,
Right.
which is good,
Right.
but it can also lead to some friction
Oh.
if it's not handled well.
So how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
For some businesses,
Yeah.
that direct connection with their customer is
Hmm.
really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else we should be thinking about? One more thing is eligibility.
Okay, what does that mean?
Not all businesses qualify for
so,
factoring.
so what are they looking for?
Factoring companies,
Right.
they usually want to work with businesses
Well,
that have a steady stream of invoices
okay.
and a solid customer base.
So like a brand new startup.
Yeah.
With like 2 clients.
Yeah, they're probably not going to qualify.
Okay.
Factors want to see that you have a track record of
Right.
sales
Okay.
and reliable payments
Makes sense.
before they're willing to take that risk.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not.
Okay. So this brings us to like the big question. How do you decide
Right.
if this is right for you?
That's the $1 million question.
What are the questions you should be asking yourself?
I think the first question is, how badly do you need the cash?
Okay.
Like, are you struggling to make payroll
Right.
or cover expenses?
Uh-huh.
Or are you missing out on growth opportunities
Okay.
because you don't have enough cash on hand?
So if it's like make or break,
Yeah.
then factoring starts to look pretty good.
It can be a lifesaver.
Okay. What else?
Also, think about the volume of invoices.
Yeah.
How many are you dealing with?
Uh-huh.
How often are you sending them out?
Right.
If it's a lot,
Okay.
factoring can really streamline things
Okay.
and free up a ton of time.
But if it's just like a couple invoices here and there,
Yeah.
maybe not worth it.
It might not be worth the hassle.
Okay. And then, of course, there's those customer relationships.
Yes. Oh,
That's a big one. You got to weigh the pros and cons.
You got to decide what's more important.
Right.
Faster payment
Uh-huh.
or keeping that direct control
Okay.
over the customer experience.
Makes sense. Sounds like there's a lot to consider.
Yeah. It's not a decision to take lightly.
Definitely not. And I imagine that's where a company like Corporate Debt Recovery
Oh, absolutely.
can really help.
They're the experts.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They can look at your specific situation
Yeah.
and tell you if factoring makes sense for you.
Yeah.
And if so,
Uh-huh.
what kind of arrangement would be best?
Now, let's say I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I've looked at all the angles,
Okay.
and I've decided factoring isn't right for me.
Okay.
Are there other options out there?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For businesses that are, struggling with cash flow, absolutely.
What else can they do?
Well, corporate debt recovery, they offer other services too.
Okay.
It's not just factoring.
So they might suggest.
Yeah, they might suggest.
Other ways to improve cash flow.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, they might help you negotiate better payment terms with your suppliers, or they might help you set up stricter credit policies for new customers.
So you're not stuck, even if factoring isn't the right fit.
There are other tools in the toolbox.
Love that. All right, so here's the big question for you, our listeners. If you were facing a cash crunch, would you consider factoring?
It's a tough one.
It is.
It's not a magic solution.
Right.
But it can be really helpful for the right business.
So do your research.
Absolutely.
Ask questions.
Talk to the experts.
And make the decision that's best for you.
At the end of the day, you got to do what's right for your business.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of debt factoring. We'll see you next time.